What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name's Kyle. Tonight, Tuesday evening, October 15th, we got the Waiver Wire show for you guys tonight. So we'll hang out for the next 30 or 40 minutes or so. If you guys want to hang out and get your questions answered, please type them in. I will get to them shortly. What I'm going to do first here is kind of review the injury report and all the injuries that we're watching for, and then I'll kind of just give you guys a brief overview of my favorite ads for the week. So thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Welcome to the show. We have two teams on bye for week 7. That's the Chicago Bears and the Dallas Cowboys. Not too many QB injuries that we have to worry about. Anthony Richardson with the oblique. They're thinking that he's going to play this weekend. I expect him to play as well. Tua Tagovailoa, they're saying he's going to play at some point in 2024. He could be back week 8 at the earliest here. Matthew Stafford's got some back soreness, but overall, I'm not too concerned about that. I think he's going to be fine. And the last QB that I'm watching is Derek Carr with the oblique injury. We know he's going to be out for a little bit, expecting a week 9 or 10 return on him. We have a long list of running backs here. It's probably the longest list that I have here. So Jonathan Taylor, ankle injury. I'm curious to see if he's able to practice tomorrow. I think he's probably going to play, but he's probably more of a 50-50 game time decision. Would love to see a practice Wednesday. That means he's off to a good start. If Jonathan Taylor's out, I'm not super excited about Trey Sermon. We saw him get 18 carries for like 27 yards. It was really ugly. Tyler Goodson might be the guy that I'm looking for there. James Cook missed last night with the toe injury. Ray Davis looked great. I'm sure we'll talk about Ray Davis shortly. 50-50 call for Cook. I think he's going to be limited at best this week, and maybe he misses another game. Christian McCaffrey out week 7, maybe back week 8. They have a bye week 9. Week 10, I think, is the most likely chance we see CMC. Jordan Mason, we're going to be watching his reports. He's got an AC joint sprain. They also have a bye coming up, so maybe they take it easy with him. We'll watch for Jordan Mason's practice reports tomorrow. Travis Etienne, hamstring. He's going to be listed as doubtful. I have him listed as week to week. Devon Achane, concussion. I think he's going to be playing, but we're seeing some guys take a week or two to get back from concussion. Aaron Jones with the hip injury. He's questionable. And I should have started talking off about the trades that happened today, but the Vikings traded for a running back today. So that's interesting. So we'll monitor Aaron Jones off the bye with the hip injury. Brian Robinson with the knee injury. He missed last week. We'll see if he can practice this week. Same thing with Ramondre Stevenson, but he's got a foot injury. We'll watch his reports this week. Rashad White also with a foot injury. We're watching for him. They're saying Nick Chubb's going to play in week 7 here, which is luckily because Jerome Ford's going to be out with a hamstring injury. They're kind of saying week to week for Jerome Ford. So timing there for Nick Chubb to maybe be in your fantasy lineups this week. I'm not sure. We'll see how the rankings shake out. Devin Singletary with a groin injury. I think he's on track to play this week. He might get some limited practices in tomorrow, and we'll go from there. I think Tyrone Tracy, though, might be someone worth holding on to. Tajay Spears week to week with a hamstring. Jonathan Brooks, they're thinking he's going to get practicing this week. So they still have 3 weeks to actually elevate him to the team. So I still think we're 2 to 3 weeks out from seeing Jonathan Brooks on an NFL field. Zamir White with the groin injury. Gus Edwards on IR. A couple guys coming back from IR here are Marshawn Lloyd, Kendre Miller, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Keaton Mitchell. Still no timetable on Keaton Mitchell. And then we'll see about Cordero Patterson. A lot of running backs here. Receiver list is not as long, but it is still longer than I want it to be. Nico Collins, expecting him to return week 10 with a hamstring. Marvin Harrison, I labeled him as doubtful with a concussion. He had that weird wobble as he kind of stood up from it. And they have a Monday night game this week, so he does get one extra day, but I think we're going to probably see him listed as doubtful all week. Malik Neighbors didn't play the last 2 games with that concussion injury. I think he's probably going to play this weekend, but man, that's a weird one. We'll watch for his reports tomorrow. Chris Olave is probably not playing Thursday night. They might have ruled him out already. Devontae Adams, of course, the big trade here to New York Jets. A hamstring injury has disappeared, and we're going to see Devontae Adams play on Sunday Night Football with the New York Jets. I'm expecting Cooper Kupp to return this week. We'll watch for his reports tomorrow. Jaden Reed had an ankle thing. We'll watch for his reports. He might just miss Wednesday and play practice on Thursday, Friday. Puka Nacua has a chance to return next week, but we'll probably want to get a full week of practice in for him. Jacoby Myers, ankle injury. He didn't play last week. We'll see if he can go and be the wide receiver 1 for the Raiders. Khalil Shakir, he played last night. I think he's going to be on the injury report. We're probably not so excited about Shakir now that Amari Cooper's there. I don't think Dontavian Wicks is going to be playing for the next game or two with a shoulder injury, so we'll talk about some of the Packer guys on the wire. Adam Thielen, potential return weeks 8 or 9. Jordan Whittington's got a shoulder that we're monitoring, and Zay Jones possibly get thrust into the lineup with Marvin Harrison ailing. And then just a few tight ends here. Dallas Goedert hamstring, not sure how severe it is. I'm expecting him to be doubtful for the week. TJ Hawkinson, I want to see him practice limited all week and get ready for week 8. I don't think he's going to play week 7, but I could be surprised. And then just a couple whatever injuries, Tyler Conklin, Hayden Hurst. We'll see if those guys have anything. So a ton of injuries. And then just to recap, I'll get to your questions shortly here, guys. Favorite ads for the week here at the quarterback position, and this is, a list of guys that are below 60% and under owned on ESPN. I think my favorite streamer, Sam Darnold, coming off a bye at home against Detroit, the Lions defense. We know they're not very good in the secondary and allow a lot of points there. I actually like Trevor Lawrence in London against the New England Patriots. It's a home game for them, but the Patriots defense is not very good. And I do think the passing game is showing signs of life in Jacksonville with Evan Ingram back now. You could play Jared Goff at Minnesota. It's a tough matchup, but the Lions are playing really, really well right now. I do like Geno Smith at Atlanta. I kind of like Justin Herbert at Arizona. I like Matthew Stafford at home against the Raiders if Cooper Kupp plays. And then the sneaky one here is Drake May, who actually looked pretty good from a fantasy numbers wise and had some nice moments last week. He's going to get Jacksonville, so we kind of like Drake May. I have a deep list of running backs for you guys, I know some of these guys are already owned, but Tank Bigsby should be owned, Tyrone Tracy, Antonio Gibson, Alexander Madison, Jalen Warren. Ray Davis is going to be the hot one if no one picked him up last night. Kimani Vidal should be a hot one. Tyler Algier should be owned already. And then it's handcuff season. So Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, Braylon Allen, Sean Tucker, Damian Pierce. And then the last one here is Isaac Orendo / Patrick Taylor. We'll talk about those running backs when I get questions. At receiver, Juju should have been picked up over his bye week. I think Romeo Doubs is going to look pretty good going forward. I like Demario Douglas to be Drake May's number 1 target. Jalen Tolbert, if anyone drops Jalen Tolbert over the bye week, I think he's a nice stash play. Christian Watson should be picked up by now. Michael Wilson for the Cardinals might be their number 1 receiver this weekend. Xavier Legette might have been dropped. He caught a touchdown last week. I did have Alan Lazard on the list here, but he gets downgraded with Devontae Adams there. He's going to be the clear number 3 receiver. The good news is the Jets still do 3 wide receiver sets, so he's going to play a lot. Just don't know about what his production is going to be. And then deeper leagues here, you have Gabe Davis, Noah Brown for the Commanders, Devon Vele for the Broncos, Troy Franklin for the Broncos, and then Zay Jones. We'll get to the tight ends here. Cole Kmet should be owned. Dalton Schultz, I like him with Nico Collins out. I still like Isaiah Likely. Otherwise, Zach Ertz, Cade Otton, those are some deeper ones here for you. Maybe Taysom Hill. I don't know if he's going to play tomorrow night, but Colby Parkinson looked good before the bye week too. And then some super deep ones here. Theo Johnson, Eric All, and Jatavian Sanders. So we're seeing some good things from the rookie tight ends here. And then if you need defensive help, I think the Bills versus Tennessee, maybe the Saints tomorrow night Thursday night against Denver, maybe the Chargers against Arizona, maybe the Dolphins against the Colts, and maybe the Rams against the Las Vegas Raiders. So there you go. All the injury reports and some of my favorite ads for the week. I might have missed a thing or two in there, but we'll get to it, and I'm going to start answering some questions now. So good evening to Harris. Hope you're doing well, my man. What are we doing with Zach Moss, Adams, Cam Akers, and Amari Cooper? Okay, so let's start with Devontae Adams. I think if you have Devontae Adams, this is what you were waiting for. So if you held on to him or you acquired him via trade, this is what you want. I actually don't think his value changes all that much because his level of target competition goes up a little bit here with Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, and a really healthy running back with Breece Hall. So I like Devontae Adams. I don't think he's a top 5 receiver. I think he's more of like a top 10, top 12, really strong wide receiver 1. The big loser there would be Garrett Wilson. I think Breece Hall is going to continue to eat. So I like the Devontae Adams trade. And if anything, this boosts Aaron Rodgers up to like a fringe QB1. I still think he's excellent for QB2, super flex leagues, but I think in a QB1 league, maybe Rodgers should be picked up. But you're going to be starting Devontae Adams every week. You're going to be starting Garrett Wilson every week. Alan Lazard's the real question. With Amari Cooper there, you're going to be plugging him in. He gets an upgrade from his quarterback play and the offensive identity. I think he's going to be a strong wide receiver too. You can try and, if you want, now is the time. If you want to move Devontae Adams or Amari Cooper, now would be the time to do so, especially in a dynasty league where these are, aging wide receivers with big upgrades today. now's a good time to maybe look into selling those guys for first picks or whatever kind of draft capital you can get for them. So I think Adams and Cooper are both really strong wide receiver twos the rest of the way. Maybe Adams is a top 10 receiver. Cam Akers, I mean, I cut Cam Akers last week in a handful of leagues as he fell to the running back 4 on the Texans depth chart. But now goes to Minnesota, where I think he's going to be the clear number 3. You have Jones, you have Ty Chandler, and then Cam Akers. And Akers has familiarity with that team, so he should know the playbook and some of the verbiage there, which is good. But this makes me hesitate a little bit on Aaron Jones here. Makes me a little bit nervous that maybe his injury is a little bit more severe, or the Vikings are just being smart and saying, "Hey, it's a long season. We're trying." They have a Super Bowl talent roster right now. They're trying to go deep into the playoffs. So, and they didn't really have a clear number 3 running back. So I think that's just like a nice depth piece for them. If Aaron Jones were to miss this weekend, I don't think we're playing Cam Akers in our fantasy lineups, but he could be, held on to over the weekend to see how he looks with the new team behind Ty Chandler. And if it is no Aaron Jones in a game, it's going to be a mix of Ty Chandler and Cam Akers. I think Ty Chandler would be the one that I want to start. And then last but not least, Zach Moss. Now, he has gotten hopped by Chase Brown the last 3 weeks. I believe Chase Brown's outplayed him. Zach Moss was also coming off of a little bit of a knee, or was it the ankle injury? So that might have been a little bit of the factor as far as the snap counts and things like that. What doesn't help Moss is that he fumbled, and he lost the fumble there. I think right now, talent-wise, Chase Brown is the better running back, but there's something of use of Zach Moss where they like him in pass protection. They like him in short yardage. They trust him in very pressure situations. So you're still holding on to Zach Moss. I wouldn't try trading him away. His value is as low as it is. And if Chase Brown gets nicked up, you're going to be looking at Zach Moss again as a potential starter. So I think for now, he's a bench stash. He's more of like he's kind of like a Braylon Allen type handcuff where he's going to get his 5 to 10 touches. Not sure if we can start him every week, but I think he's worth holding on to. Would you rather drop Ford or Tank Bigsby? I think the clear answer is Jerome Ford. He's week to week right now with that hamstring injury. You have Nick Chubb back this week. You also have Deonta Foreman, and they like Pierre Strong Jr. And for the next 2-3 weeks, on the flip side, you have Travis Etienne, who's going to be week to week as well. And so Tank Bigsby, I expect to be the 1A back in Jacksonville in games like this weekend against the Patriots, where the Jags could be leading from that whole game, and maybe they get Tank Bigsby up to 15, 16 carries in games where they're, 10-point underdogs or something like that. I probably don't want to play Tank Bigsby, but for the short term, the next month or so, I'd rather have Tank Bigsby on my roster than Jerome Ford. Although I do think when Ford returns, he's going to be the third down back. So Jamar Chase or Jonathan Taylor the rest of season, I'm going Jamar Chase. Good evening to Harvey. Hope you're doing well. Thoughts on Chase Brown? So we just kind of touched on Zach Moss a little bit. I think Chase Brown, man, could be really special in that offense. And I'm just pulling up his numbers from the last few games here. He is now 3 straight games of double digits, 3 straight games of double-digit carries. He's seen 10, 12, and 15 carries the last 3 games here. He's also gotten 2 catches in every game except week 2. So we know he's good for 2 to 3 catches per game. He doesn't really have a lot of receiving yards, but he's adding, 2 to 4 points per game as a receiver, which is nice. And then on top of that, if you're going to keep giving him 12 to 15 carries per game, he's a must-start running back too right now. He also has 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games here, and they're giving him goal line opportunities, which we kind of anticipated those to be Zach Moss. But right now, he's a very solid running back too. And, they get Cleveland this week, so it's not the best matchup, but Philadelphia, Las Vegas, those are some nice matchups coming up here. And I think you just want a big piece of that Bengals offense. And I think Chase Brown is a young, talented back on the up and up. So I like Chase Brown quite a bit. Good evening to David. Vidal, Dearness, or Algiers, rest of season. Okay. So the guy with the most permanent role is Tyler Algier, because we know that even when Bijan's healthy, Algier's got, upside to get like he just did last weekend. He had 100 yards and he rumbled in for a touchdown. His PPR production this season. 19.8 last week, 5.5, 10, 3.2, 7.5, and 2.1. He finally had a ton of carries last week, but otherwise he'd been kind of in that 7 to 10 carry range, and it gets a catch or two per game. I think Algiers, he's still a handcuff, but he is part of the offense, which I like. For him to go nuts, though, you're going to need a Bijan Robinson injury. Whereas these other two guys, Dearness Johnson, last week, he was the Jags running back one, which I thought was interesting because basically Travis Etienne gets hurt and they put in Dearness Johnson directly into the Travis Etienne role, which is your third down, your 2-minute drill, your passing down back. He had 6 carries for 28 yards. He caught 2 for 16 as a receiver, 6.4 fantasy points. And I'm seeing ESPN project him for about 9.5 points this weekend. I still think Tank Bigsby, the rest of the way, Tank Bigsby is going to lead the Jacksonville Jaguars in carries. I feel very good about that. Whereas Dearness Johnson, he really only has value if Travis Etienne is out because he would be their clear number 3 when Etienne returns. So he's got the shortest rest of season lifespan, so I'm going to rank him 3rd. And then it becomes Kamani Vidal versus Tyler Algier. I think with Vidal, we're seeing big playability right away, which is pretty awesome. And I think we've probably seen the last of Gus Edwards as a fantasy option. It's just not there. But Kamani Vidal comes in his first career game, 4 for 11 as a rusher, 2 for 40 in the big receiving touchdown, which everybody saw. And then you also just if he's the number 2 running back, that puts him in the same boat as Algier. He's just the next man up in case of an injury. But J.K. Dobbins is one of the most injury-prone running backs that we've seen in the last handful of years, and they're giving J.K. Dobbins massive, massive workload. So I think rest of season, the guy that's got the biggest boom potential would be Kamani Vidal, because if Dobbins goes down, Vidal would be the next man up in a really heavy run offense, whereas Algier, he needs a Bijan Robinson injury. I think Bijan Robinson's built a lot better than J.K. Dobbins, so we're going to rank him. We're going to go Vidal, Algier, and Dearness Johnson. So I hope that helps, David. What are you doing with Richardson? We're hoping and praying. We are hoping and praying. If you have Anthony Richardson, I don't want to drop him. I was actually pretty okay with them letting him sit out one more game. Hopefully he's had time to fully heal with that oblique injury and he's ready to roll out there. It's not too long ago. Week 1, he rumbled for 56 yards and a touchdown. He had 212 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. I think we forget about that just because of the last couple games that he had, weeks 2, 3, and 4. But I'm hopeful. It looked like Richardson was going to have a big game against the Steelers in week 4. So we're still holding on to Richardson. Hopefully you guys do have a solid backup to pair with Richardson. I don't want to let him go because as soon as he's, putting up 20 fantasy points again, we're going to be thinking, yeah, he's a must start. QB1 again. Tank Bigsby or Tyrone Tracy non-PPR. So I think it's Tank Bigsby because I expect him again to lead the team in carries the rest of the way. He's not really involved in the passing game. Tyrone Tracy is involved in the passing game, but in a non-PPR, that doesn't matter as much. But you also, they paid Devin Singletary money. Devin Singletary he's a quality back. I think you're probably looking at a committee when Singletary returns, whether that's 50-50 split or even if it's 60-40 in Tracy's favor. I think you're looking at a committee there. Tank Bigsby's still in a committee with whoever he's playing, but he is the goal line back. He is kind of the guy that they're going to give the ball 10 plus times per game. It's close. I don't have a preference really. If you want to keep Tracy, he is the more talented back, I would say. But right now, the Jags with no ETN right now, I think it's Tank Bigsby rest of season. For this week, I would go Bigsby as well. Tucker or Irving? Good evening, Daniel. I think for this weekend, they're playing the Baltimore Ravens, which is not a great matchup, and we also don't know if Rachaad White's going to play. We did see the head coach say that this could be a 3-man committee, which would really suck for fantasy football. So I don't know what the correct answer is going to be. I do know, though, with the Baltimore Ravens, they haven't allowed more than 70 yards rushing to running backs in a game all year. They've allowed 3 rushing touchdowns, but they are very good against running teams here, so I'm not a big fan of either. If I had to choose Tucker or Irving for this weekend, I'm going to lean Bucky Irving, and rest of the season, I'm still going to go Bucky Irving. Cincinnati, New Orleans, or the Rams. So we're asking defense here. Let me think about this because Cincinnati's defense is not great. You know, we finally saw them play good against the New York Giants, but it wasn't that impressive. They're getting Cleveland this weekend, though, who just lost to Amari Cooper. It is in Cleveland, but I have a feeling, you know, pretty much every defense has had a good game against the Cleveland Browns. Even the Jags had a good day. You know, they had 2 sacks and they limited them in points. I think they had 6 fantasy points that day. So I'm leaning towards the Bengals being the safe play here against one of the worst offenses, and they just give up a lot of sacks. So I think it's Cincinnati this weekend. I think my number 2 would probably be the Rams against the Raiders. They're just kind of limping into this one. So I would rank them Cincy, Rams, Saints. And yeah, I'm fine with dropping Juwan Jennings. It's tough, man. When a guy scores 47 points for you in 1 week, you're going to want to hold on to him for as long as possible. But I think with a healthy Debo, a healthy Kittle, and also a healthy Ayuk, there's just not enough there for Jennings. We're going to need another injury to Debo or Ayuk for Jennings to be startable in fantasy football. So for the short term, I think Jennings can be dumped. What are we doing with Quentin Johnston? I don't think he's a necessary hold in fantasy football right now. We do have Josh Palmer healthy. Ladd McConkey is kind of the clear wide receiver there. I don't really think there's a situation where you're going to be like, yeah, I feel good about starting Quentin Johnston. He did go 3 for 22 last weekend on 4 targets. They get Arizona, though, on Monday Night Football, so I'm open to him making a big play or two. But he's just too boom bust for me. If you want to swap out Quentin Johnston for some of the other receivers that we talked about, whether it's Romeo Doubs, Demario Douglas, Jalen Tolbert, Christian Watson. I also think maybe looking at Xavier Legette, guys like that. I'm open to move. Johnston's not a necessary hold for me. The Bills are Cincinnati. Okay, so I trust the Bills more than I trust Cincinnati. I really, really like the Bengals' opportunity this weekend, but I'm going to lean slightly with the Bills. They're getting Will Levis at home. That's a really good spot for the Bills team. Drop Legette, Whittington, or Tucker. I think the play is probably to drop Trey Tucker. I know he's the wide receiver too, but he's more like the number 3 target, actually. You know, when you consider Brock Bowers, I think the pecking order is Jacoby and Brock Bowers as the top 2 targets. Trey Tucker, we're never going to be able to correctly start him in a game. You know, he's going to go 1 for 5 yards most games. Otherwise, he's going to get 2 for 42 and a touchdown, something like that. So I think Tucker is probably the least trustworthy. Whittington looks good, and I know Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are coming back, but re-injury risk is high with those guys. And I actually think Whittington could be the number 3 receiver for the Rams. So I think it's close between those two. I'm probably going to let Tucker go just because I don't think I'm ever going to feel confident starting him. Legette would be the one that I want to hold on for sure. Herbert or Rodgers for this weekend? I think you got to go with Aaron Rodgers, man. There's going to be some magical stuff in the air with Devontae Adams on the team. I do like Justin Herbert, but again, they are a heavy run team. Herbert really is not going to have the opportunity to open it up and throw the ball a ton enough for fantasy. I think he's safe as a QB2 for Superflex leagues, but he's only thrown for over 200 yards once in 5 games this year. He's thrown a touchdown in every game, which is nice. He doesn't add a lot on the running game either. I think it's Aaron Rodgers for me. Good evening, Sport Dog. Hope you're doing well. We picked up Slayton and Mooney. Ooh. So I think Mooney's value is going to go down once we get Malik Neighbors back, probably pretty significantly. And Slayton's looked good, but he's kind of just like your prototypical, waiver wire guy. He's had 11 targets in each of the last 2 games, which has been nice, 26 and 11.7 points. They get Philadelphia this weekend, though, so I could see Slayton having a good game. But any week that Malik Neighbors is healthy, we're not going to feel very confident in Darius Slayton in our lineup. So I would rather have Josh Downs over Darius Slayton. But if you want to keep Slayton, I'm okay with it. I just think I think Josh Downs is the wide receiver you want in Indianapolis. And hey, good evening to Ryan. Hope you're doing well, my man. Would you keep the Eagles D for this week? Sure. It's a tough divisional game. It's at New York, but the Giants defense or I guess the Giants have a good defense, but their offense has been friendly to opponent fantasy defenses. So I'm just looking at what the Giants have allowed to opposing defenses. Last week, Cincinnati had a good game against them. They had 10 points, 9 points, 7, 8, 5, and 23. It's a good spot, I think, for the Eagles. If you're in a pinch and you don't have anyone else better, I think the Eagles are a top 10 play this week. And Noah, welcome to the show, man. Thank you for hanging out with us and getting your question in there. He's got Etienne and Jacobs for Mixon. Etienne will never start for my team. I would have Mixon, Bijan, and Achane. Etienne, Jacobs for Mixon. I mean, I think right now we don't really have a good barometer for what Etienne's value is. You know, even when Etienne's healthy, he's got to deal with Tank Bigsby, and that offense has not been very stable, you know, this entire season. So I think Etienne, is he even a top 24 back when he's healthy? We don't know that. And now he's week to week with a hamstring. He had a shoulder thing. I think I'm okay with it, man. If you want to upgrade, basically you're upgrading Jacobs to Mixon, and I think that's probably where you want to be right now. So I'm okay with it. You get Mixon, Bijan, and Achane. That's a pretty nice triple-headed monster at running back. So I'm okay with it. No, I would go ahead and upgrade to Mixon. Dearness Johnson or Sean Tucker full PPR. I'm going with Dearness Johnson. Again, I don't want to mess with the Baltimore Ravens against running backs. I do think Sean Tucker's hot. He could play well. But if Rachaad White's in there, we're not going to be looking at Sean Tucker at all because, again, it's a three-way monster, weird rotation at the running back position, whereas I'm very confident that Travis Etienne's not playing this weekend. He's getting the New England Patriots, which feels pretty good. I'm just going to read off what the Ravens have allowed, you know, to running backs. They've allowed 3 running backs to go over double-digit fantasy points. That was Isaiah Pacheco week 1. Chase Brown did it. He had 14.4 points. Austin Eckler did it, 10.8 points last week. But otherwise, you know, no running back has ran for more than 46 yards on them. You have to throw the ball against the Ravens, and I just don't think Sean Tucker he had a nice receiving game, but I don't know if I want to double down on that. So I would lean the Ernest Johnson. Drop Atwell or Kendrick Bourne in Dynasty. Both are droppable. If I had to choose one, I guess they're both droppable, Harris. It's good, man. It's very good for Nick Chubb. It's just one less body for him to have to compete with touches. Now, I think you're going to see Pierre Strong and Deonta Foreman involved as well. You're probably going to see 3 running backs touch the ball for them this Sunday. It's going to be a huge part of what they're trying to do. You know, that they lose Amari Cooper, they're going to run the ball probably for 25 times a game. So maybe Nick Chubb goes out and gets 10 carries week 1. I'm in the camp of, like, if I have Nick Chubb, I don't want to play him this week. Sure, he could fall into the end zone, but he could also get 5 carries for 15 yards. You know, we just don't know what it's going to look like. So I do think it's good for Nick Chubb that Ford's not active or he's going to not be playing this week, but I still want to advise caution and only play Nick Chubb if, like, you're in a desperation spot and you don't really have anybody else. If you need to, I think it's okay. Should I hold on to Spears? Also have Pollard. You don't need to hold on to Spears. I know Spears, he's got a little bit of an injury right now. I don't know if he's going to play. I do see Julius Chestnut projected for some fantasy points here. And Tajay, you know, he's had 2 good games. I guess good games where double-digit fantasy points are there, a 7, a 5, and then he got a 2.7 last week. I don't think he's a necessary hold. It's very clear that Tony Pollard is the lead back. If you want to move on from Spears, and I'm fine with that, like, you could go ahead and pick up, like, I'd rather own, you know, a Vidal, a Blake Corum, a Jalen Wright, you know, some of those guys that are an injury or so away from being a potential stud. Would you repick Richardson back up? I'm open to putting Richardson back up. Like, if my quarterback, if I'm playing the streaming wars with quarterback, you know, and my QB1 is, say, I don't know, say my QB1 is Geno Smith, or say my QB1 is Kyler Murray right now. I'm open to adding him. If you have, you know, Jaden Daniels, Lamar, Hurts, Love, Baker, even Josh Allen, I don't think you need Richardson, but if you have one of those fringe QB1s, I think I'm open to grabbing Richardson back. Hold or sell Chubb. I think if you have held on to Chubb for this long, I think you hold on to him. And again, this Jerome Ford injury opens things up for Nick Chubb. He is kind of the face of that team, I think, right now. And who knows? Like I don't want to bet against Nick Chubb. He's one of the best athletes and one of the best pure runners in the NFL. I think Nick Chubb could be a surprise, But again, I want to advise caution this week. If you wanted to take advantage of the Chubb hype right now, and you can get a good return for him, say you could get Chase Brown, say you could get I don't know if you can get Devon Achane for cheap, if you can get Josh Jacobs or Kareem Hunt or something like that. I'm open to that as well, but I don't want to sell low on the man. Hold or sell Hunt. I'm holding on to Hunt, man. Like they surprised me. I think that Carson Steele fumble back in week 4 really opened it up. They've given him 41 carries in the last 2 games here, this is an RB1 workload. I think if you have Kareem Hunt, like you kind of fell into something really nice here, and he's going to be the clear lead back, I think, the rest of the way. I'm holding on to Roschon Johnson in leagues where I have him. Again, he's another one of those guys that is involved. He's kind of like a Tyler Algier, where he's involved in the offense for 6 to 10 touches per game. He's a goal line opportunity every week. And if anything happens to DeAndre Swift, like we have a potential workhorse back here. So I'm holding on to Roschon Johnson. If you want to, move on from him this week, I'm okay with it. Again, to get, Vidal or some of the other running backs we mentioned, but I would try to hold on to Roschon. I think he's one of the best handcuffs you can have. Is Pickens a better fantasy player with Wilson? I think so. And Justin Fields has been fine. Like if you have George Pickens, you've probably been like you've been okay. Like he's not hurting your team, but he's definitely not helping your team. 8 points, 5 points. He's had 3 games over double digits. I think the floors are going to be a lot higher here, and you're probably going to see a lot more. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet, so we're going to see some touchdowns. I think if you have George Pickens, you want Russell Wilson as his quarterback. And also, like, now maybe Pat Freiermuth is in play. Maybe we see more passes to the running backs. Russell Wilson targeted the hell out of the backs last year in Denver. So I think it's basically with Fields at quarterback, all the fantasy points went to Fields. Now they get to kind of get redistributed out to Pickens, to Freiermuth. Maybe another receiver emerges. Maybe Jalen Warren comes around, things like that. And hey, no problem, Sport Dog. We are doing a Wednesday show. I think and I hadn't been doing Wednesday shows to start the year. I had been doing them for members only, but I had to do it a couple weeks back, and I think we're gonna stick with that formula. So 7:00 p.m. Central Time tomorrow night, we will go live and do a Wednesday show, and we'll recap all the injury news and all the reports that came out for the day. Eagles or Cincinnati? I'm gonna go Cincinnati. I mean, I think it's pretty safe here. We're taking advantage of the Browns, man. And the Giants, despite their struggles, they're getting Malik Neighbors back. Eagles secondary is not very good. I'll go Cincinnati. And hey, Noah, thank you, man. I appreciate you for hanging out and getting your question in there. So, Harris, you want to know what the very first thing I did this morning? So when I wake up, I usually look at my most important league, and I saw Trey Sermon sitting in there, and I dropped him. That was my first thing I did this morning. So I woke up and I cut Trey Sermon. I don't even want him. If Jonathan Taylor's not going to play this weekend, I just don't want to trust Trey Sermon again. I don't think he's that good of a running back. I mean, 18 carries for 27 yards. The Titans are a good running team defensively, but I'm going to move on from Trey Sermon. I'd rather play Tyler Goodson over Trey Sermon if I had to. Do we trade Drake London? I mean, there's probably only a handful of receivers that I'd rather have over Drake London right now. If you want to capitalize on Drake London and try and cash in and get you might be able to get a Malik Neighbors, a Jamar Chase, probably not a Justin Jefferson. You can go fishing and see what you can get for him. But I think right now, man, we've seen 3 straight games of over double-digit targets. He's catching touchdowns. He's got 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games. He's locked in with Kirk Cousins. I kind of don't want to move him. I think he's a top 5 receiver right now for the rest of the season. This one's easy, Harris. We're going with Dearness Johnson. And again, if you guys aren't a member on the fantasyfellowship.com, I have my post-game notes on there, which detail everything that happened in last week's games. And this backfield split with Travis Etienne going down and the Jags playing from behind, we saw Dearness Johnson lead the way with 35 snaps, Tank Bigsby 17 snaps, ETN 11 snaps. And basically, Dearness Johnson is the one-for-one replacement for Travis Etienne. So consider for any week that Etienne's out, consider Dearness Johnson as like a poor man's Etienne. But in a game like they're going to get this weekend where they're playing the Patriots, I still think Tank Bigsby is going to be the guy, getting the carries. And I'm assuming the Jags win that game, or at least play with the lead at some point in that game. So maybe it's more Bigsby, but I still like Dearness Johnson to rack up a few catches and points. Would you trade Devonta for McLaurin? My QB is Jane Daniels. Sure, I'm fine with that. I mean, I love Devonta Smith. I think he's one of my favorite receivers in the NFL. But he is covered up by AJ Brown, and he's in a not great passing offense, but all the numbers go to him and in AJ Brown. But McLaurin right now is he's kind of on a heater, man. I think he's a top 10 fantasy receiver right now. He's wide receiver 12 overall. He's catching touchdowns, 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games, and the targets are there. They're moving him around more. I think he's got a pretty safe outlook for the rest of the year. So I like both guys. I might lean McLaurin right now. It would be Cousins. So that would be your other QB that you have, Anthony Richardson. I'm probably fine with Kirk Cousins. I think they have a bye later, though, week 12, if you want to look out that far and see what's going on. But I think if you have Kirk Cousins, you're probably starting him every week and feeling okay. Would you rather have Justice Hill or Jalen Wright? Oh, that one's easy. It's Jalen Wright. So, Harris, the thought process there would be if Justice Hill – like, what's the best outlook for Justice Hill? It would be a Derrick Henry injury, but are they going to give Justice Hill 15 carries per game? I don't think so. If anything, I think they bring in another running back and kind of keep Justice Hill's the same and just give him a little bit more. He's still going to be their third down and their 2-minute back, but I would expect another back to be brought in and be the first and second down back. Now, with Jalen Wright, we've seen him before the bye week, man. He looked really good. He had like 86 yards the other day. Raheem Mostert's healthy. Devon Achane's there. But I think we've seen enough out of Jalen Wright to know that he's probably a pretty good NFL running back. And all he needs is another injury to Achane or Mostert, and he could be startable. So I think Jalen Wright's the clear rest of season play. I don't think so, man. I think we're looking at a situation very similar to like Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy, where Ray Davis was so good. Like you could argue that he was probably the reason why Buffalo won last night. Honestly, like they were able to run the ball that first drive down their throats and establish that, hey, we're going to run all over you all night. I thought Ray Davis looked really good. And for him to catch that big 42-yard play and just be involved, and he was out there in pass pro, like they trusted him in a lot of situations, and he came through in pretty much every situation. So I think that when James Cook returns, Buffalo's a playoff team. They're a Super Bowl threat. I think you want to limit some of your touches to your running back. I still think James Cook's one of the most talented running backs in the league, but I don't think they can just go back to not giving Ray Davis any work. So I'm holding on to Ray Davis, and I don't know if you saw the video, but like his toe like smashed the ground hard. So that could easily get, flared back up. So I'm kind of holding on to Ray Davis as a handcuff with some weekly upside, kind of like a Tyler Algier. Good evening, Mike. Flex full PPR. Wandale or Connor? Oh man. Oh, we're at that point with the Arizona Cardinals offense where it's not fun, man. And James Conner's been like, he's had some really good games this year. He's had 19 points, 18 points, and 14. He's had 2 duds. They got blown out in a couple games this year, one in Detroit, the other in Green Bay, 3.5 and 6.6 points. I do get nervous about potential season swirling away here quickly. They do get the Chargers, though, and I don't think the Chargers are a team that's going to light up the scoreboard against them. So I would expect Connor in a good game script to be able to run the ball. It's on paper, it's a tough matchup, though. The Chargers, the 6th best team against the running backs. They've allowed 1 touchdown on the ground all year. But I would imagine if the Cardinals are trying to get their offense back on track, I think Connor is your highest ceiling. So it's kind of, Mike, it's going to come down to like, do you want the 10 points from Wan'Dale Robinson, or do you want to shoot for the 19, 20-point game from James Conner? I personally would play James Conner. I like to play running backs over receivers in that situation because if I can get a running back that's going to get the ball 15, 20 times, there's a good chance there's a touchdown opportunity in there. There's a good chance there's a couple catches in there. And I know Wandale has been pretty good, man. He's been double digits in nearly every game this year. But even his best game, is 16 to 18 points. I think James Conner is probably your safer bet to get a ceiling game. So if you want to play it safe, I think you go Wandale, you collect your 10 to 12 points, but I'm probably going to go with James Conner. Okay, we got a lot of names here. Pick one to add and rank the rest of season. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of names here, Harris. Tank, Bigsby, Braylon Allen, Jacoby Myers, Lockett, Watson, Dobbs, Wilson, Shakir, Algier, Madison, Warren. Pick one to add and rank the rest of the year. I think I don't know your current running back situation. If you need a running back, the guy to pick up is probably Tank Bigsby. If you need a receiver, the guy is probably Jacoby Myers. Now, I think the guys that I'm most excited about here at receiver are Jacoby, the Packer receivers, and Demario Douglas. At the running back position, it's probably Bigsby, Madison, and Warren. So this is really tough here. Rest of season, and I don't know if this is full PPR or not. If it is full PPR, I'm going to lean towards some of the wide receivers here. This is almost too hard, Harris, because I need some context as to what you need. You say none of these players would start. If none of them are going to start, then I think you probably got to go with Jacoby Myers. I would put Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson next. I would put Demario Douglas next. I would do Bigsby, Warren, Madison. And then I would do Lockett, Wilson, Braylon, Algier, Shakir. So I hope that helps. I would probably add one of the Packer receivers or Jacoby Myers there. Douglas or Pickens this week in rest of season. It's a tough spot here. Russell Wilson's first game. I want to be excited about George Pickens, but I think I probably play it safe with Demario Douglas, and I just collect my 12 points here. So I'm going to lean Demario Douglas this week, but rest of season, I'm probably going to go George Pickens. But if it's this week, give me Douglas. Rest of season, give me Mr. Pickens. Non-PPR, okay. Non-PPR, then that's going to change it, and we're gonna boost it more towards running backs. But with non-PPR, it's all about touchdowns. Right now, the Packer receivers are catching touchdowns. So Lockett, or Watson and Dobbs probably hop Jacoby Myers for me. So if this is non-PPR, I'm going to go Bigsby, Dobbs, Watson, Jacoby. That's a tier break. And then we'll go Madison, Warren, Algier, Lockett, Shakir, something like that. That's a pretty deep waiver wire, Harris. And if this is your waiver wire pool, you're probably going to be rotating these guys and picking up new guys almost every week. Favorite defense to start this week, maybe your top 5. So teams that are like largely available, I think Cincinnati is, and I'm not going to rank these guys, but I think Cincinnati is probably a top 5 play this week. At Cleveland offense has just been atrocious. They just lost Amari Cooper. Sack City, I think the Bengals defense is a good play. I think Buffalo defense is another good play. They're getting Tennessee Titans at home. Tennessee can't score the ball. Only Tony Pollard is like the only useful asset on that team right now. So Bengals and Buffalo look pretty good to me. I think there's really no like stud defenses this week, but I kind of like the Broncos. They're probably picked up in a lot of leagues, but they're getting the Saints on a short week. Spencer Rattler, that could be a nice spot. I don't think Rashid or Olave are going to play, so I like the Denver Broncos quite a bit this week. In deeper ones, you can maybe try the Washington Commanders. maybe. I mean, they're at home against Carolina. In the last few games, they have been better. They did allow the Ravens to put up 30 points, but that's the Ravens. Otherwise, they held Cleveland to 13. They held the Cardinals to 14. They held the Giants to 18 points. Maybe they can contain the Carolina Panthers. I'm not opposed to the Philadelphia Eagles this week. I don't know if they're a top 5 play. But otherwise, if I had to pick one more potential top 5 play, it might be the New Orleans Saints defense. That game's at home, Thursday Night Football against the Broncos on a short week. Bo Nix. Broncos don't really light up the scoreboard. I think the Saints are an interesting call. And if I had to throw out one more call, I guess I would go with the Rams off a bye week here against the Raiders. Broncos against New Orleans without Derek Carr. Yes, I like that matchup quite a bit. That was one of my favorites. Broncos are widely owned, though, so I don't know if everyone's going to be able to pick them up. I think if you're picking up a defense this weekend, look for Cincinnati, look for Buffalo. Those would be the two that excite me the most. But I'm going to get out of here for the night, guys. This was fun. I hope you guys get all the waiver claims that you need for tonight and tomorrow. Otherwise, tomorrow night I will be going live Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Time. If you guys want to hang out, we'll be going over all the practice news, and I'll answer any start-sit questions you guys have. Harris coming in here with one more. Michael Wilson or Braylon Allen, rest of season, non-PPR. So last night we saw Breece Hall kind of reassert himself as the dominant RB1. They didn't really use Braylon Allen much last night. I think the Jets, with their backs against the wall, they're 2-4. They need to start winning games. I think you're going to continue to see Breece Hall play a lot. So I will lean slightly Michael Wilson, even though I'm not super excited about either of these guys the rest of the season. I'll lean slightly Michael Wilson, who I think is going to be on the field every time as their number 2 receiver. Allen is he's just relegated to a handcuff now. But that's it for tonight, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you guys are new. Check out thefantasyfellowship.com, and we'll see you tomorrow evening. Peace.